Selling is the process of influencing someone to make a decision to purchase in the presence of a lot of competition. So you know what's missing in sales training? The psychology of selling. As selling is human interaction. It's about understanding people and their motivations and their needs, but yet we spend all of our time on product knowledge and the applications and industry and every other. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. I'm Kelly Riggs. Really good to have you as a part of the podcast. So excited to introduce a new guest today, a guy I ran across on LinkedIn and just immediately had an affinity for. He's Robin Burr, and you're going to want to find him on LinkedIn for a whole lot of reasons. First off, his background, his experience is pretty phenomenal. The other side of it is he's got that accent that makes him sound brilliant regardless of what he says, because he's from the UK. And one of those accents, Robin, I'd love to have one of these days, but it's clearly never going to happen. But on his LinkedIn profile, you want to find the perfect discovery call framework, absolutely free to you from Robin. And we're going to get into a big discussion about him, but he's a sales coach. But by the way, I love on LinkedIn, you say you're a sales therapist. Absolutely love that. I have been called an organizational therapist, so it gives me some sense of what you do and how you do it. But he, if you look at his LinkedIn profile, he says he talks about the psychology and influence skills that will help you reach the top 4%. I've read a number of his posts, got immediately interested, and we're going to talk about sales training today as it relates to the psychology of selling. In fact, Robin, I think it's fair to say that selling is psychology. Psychology is not a part of it. When it really comes down to influencing people to make decisions and change behaviors, we're talking about accessing the psychology of the human mind. Is that a fair statement?
100%. It's about, yeah. People don't like to use the word persuasion, but I'm gonna use it a lot because it's the ability to move someone's mindset from where they are now to where they want to be. So. Yeah, and what a killer intro, by the way. I really appreciate that.
Oh, well, you're quite welcome.
The bar high.
Well, I think many times, Robin, I think that sales leaders sort of start off with the wrong idea of what selling is. What's the definition? You know, it's too much locked up in all the management things like CRM and budgets and, you know, all those projections and all that. Selling is the process of influencing someone to make a decision to purchase in the presence of extreme competition. I mean, selling is not just buying something. I go to the store and buy a soda. I can say, you know, they're selling sodas down there, but in the way we use the word, they didn't sell me anything. I went and bought the thing, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're teaching people how to sell something, it's incumbent upon individuals to understand that's a psychological process. Talk a little bit about that and what we do or don't do in sales training that inhibits the understanding of psychology.
Yeah, 100%. You ask any top performing salesperson, why did that person buy from you? And they'll be able to tell you. You then look at the other like poor performers, and we spoke before this, right, about how many people are like below target. They just don't know why people aren't buying from them. So they are fundamentally saying, I don't know how this person made a decision. Whether they went with me or not, I don't know how that person made a decision. If you don't know how people make decisions, how can you ever attempt to influence it? I think we've unnecessarily complicated selling as well. There's lots of tools out there. There's lots of acronyms, lots of models, lots of frameworks. And I think sometimes we get ourselves all wrapped up in this really complex. We try to make it sound more complicated than it is. Your definition is spot on. It's just about influencing a person to make a decision.
Well, in my view, it's really amazing how people substitute tools for the actual process of influence, right? It's like, well, if we have the right tech stack, all the selling is going to take care of itself. To me, that's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, technology, like some of it is great. Okay. And I'm not an expert on it, but one thing it will do is it makes you do things faster and more of it.
Yes.
But it's got to be the right fucking things. Like it's got to be if you're not doing the right thing, if you don't have the right inputs, you're doing the wrong process. You're saying that your message and your position is all wrong. Then all you're going to do is set that into hyperdrive, and
Yes.
you'll burn your market.
Yeah, absolutely. You started out as a young sales guy, as I did, and we were talking before the podcast. Your early career wasn't exactly stellar, and neither was mine. But what I'm really interested in when you shared that story was if you could go back to when you started and you could tell the sales leader, the person that you worked for, hey, here's how you should train me based on what I know now. What would they do differently than when you started?
Um, they would urge everybody to understand more about what the customer isn't saying, more
Okay.
about how to read body language, how to read the subtext, which, you don't have that understanding as a young 20 something. You get given a script, you get to be given a bit of product, you repeat it verbatim, but you can't read the room. You don't know how to disqualify, you don't know how to challenge, how to probe, how to clarify. You take everything at face value. You have what someone calls happy ears. Someone says something to you, you take it as gospel, whether it be good stuff or objections, you just take it as gospel. You don't have the confidence to challenge. So I think like to get under the skin and really get deep into the conversation rather than staying at that surface level, goes back to your point about being transactional.
Right.
Like, do you want my thing? Yes or no? And then you just take it at face value. So I think if my education had been a bit more about be skeptical, be curious, go deeper, challenge, all that kind of good stuff, I think I've had way better conversations and I would have learned a lot more in the process of selling. I would have learned more from my customers had I just had that mindset, if I just had that lens on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that phrase, be curious. To me, that's one of the real critical keys in selling. In fact, going back to the beginning, if people would have asked me, listen, what is the one critical skill that you need to have to be a great salesperson? My stock answer was, oh, you've got to be a great listener. And listening, the most important skill there is. And then one day it dawned on me, no, that's completely wrong. That's not right. It's the quality of the questions that you ask that determine the quality of the answers that you receive, right? And so I love your perfect discovery call framework because in my experience, and I've been doing this a very long time, the average salesperson has no idea how to ask a question that results in a dialogue that gives me really powerful information.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And
So
I'll tell you the reason.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, can that be taught? I mean, can you actually teach the young 20-something-year-old guy with not a whole lot of experience? Can you
Yeah,
can you teach them?
I think you can. Yeah, I think anyone can learn pretty much anything, particularly in our field. Like it's communication skills. But I think because the perception of selling is that, we have to push, we have to demonstrate our value, we have to tell them about the awards that we've won, we have to tell them about how long we've been in business, we have to tell them what our customers said. Like most sales trainer, we're going to talk about this in a little while, but one of the things that we'll probably come back to is one of the problems I have with sales training is that typically your onboarding of a sales rep is all about, let me tell you about the product. You need to know about the organization's history and the product, and you fill a young sales rep's head with all of that knowledge, then you put them on the phones. What's the first thing they're going to talk about?
Themselves. Sure.
They're going to talk about themselves, their product, the company's history, and all the stuff that is unimportant. I'd rather have a rep that just goes on the phone that doesn't have a clue or very little idea of what your actual product or service does. Like you have a broad understanding of who it serves and the problems it solves, but you don't know all the features, you don't know all the benefits, you don't know all the technical details. Then you can't talk about it even if you wanted to. So I've got to talk about you now, haven't I? I've got to ask you the questions. So I think
Absolutely.
that's again another big mistake that I think I fooled myself into thinking I was good at what I did early on because I could talk a lot about features and benefits and I could make it sound fancy. I could
Yes.
make myself sound impressive. And I fooled myself into thinking that is credibility.
Yes, 100%. In fact, when I was a young guy, because my perception of sales was exactly that, I was actually a guy who studied the competition in great detail. I used to boast, I could sell their product better than they can sell their product, right? Because I know so much about it. And so as I would position my product to be so much better than their product, then I thought, well, that's going to win me the deal. And it didn't work out that way. And I really couldn't figure it out. But you're exactly right. We train you on product. If that's the truth, Robin, then I think the next logical step is to teach them everything about the competitor's product. So you know everything that you do better than they do. And then you can point out how much better you are, right? But
Yeah.
we know where that leads.
Yeah. I mean, it's just what they expect to hear. And you're working at that logical level that we discussed before we got on. It's like you can tell people all the facts, and it may even be true. It may even be factually correct, but that doesn't mean that it's influential in the eyes of the person that you're talking to.
Right. So if you're and then of course you do this for a living now, but if you're a sales leader at a new company, they say we got to have Robin Burr. They throw like a bazillion dollars at you and say you need to be the sales leader for us. Okay. How would you go about changing that sales training? I mean, clearly there's this weird balance. They have to know product in order to build some credibility and have the ability to answer some technical questions, even if they hand off to a technical support person at some point. I mean, I got to have some understanding. But how would you go about it? How would you structure an onboarding of a new salesperson in very general terms in order to achieve what you think is really important?
Yeah, you know what? I would go straight to existing customers, and the people who are raving fans, who champions your brand ambassadors, and you'd get them talking to people who are already using your product and service. And the question you want to come out of that conversation with is why? Why did you buy from us? I don't care what you're using our product for. I don't care how you're using it. I don't care who held the budget necessarily. Like all that stuff is kind of somewhat important, but why? At the moment you decided to sign that contract or that DocuSign or say yes or shake my VP's hand, why? Okay. And then, you deconstruct that. And what you'll find there's a pattern. You'll find there is a pattern. Or you can even say, look, if we shut our business down tomorrow, what position would that leave you in?
Right.
And what comes out the prospect's mouth is the problem that they're having, right? Or would have. How
Absolutely.
inconvenient it would be without you. That's your value proposition. Now, all you need to do is go to other customers or prospects and go out to the market. And you just now need to center your questions around those challenges. Here's the challenge people will have. Is this resonating with you? Is this something you've got something for? Yada, yada, yada. And eventually someone will ask you, what do you do? And you will know enough to satisfy the reason they're asking that without having to go on a 20-minute monologue about all the features and benefits that your marketing department told you, you should have in the slide deck.
Absolutely. I have to smile because you didn't know this and we've not talked about it, but that's exactly what I advocate. It's like, look, if you're going to teach somebody about your product, you got to put it in some context. Yeah. So if you go to your best customers who love you, not only do they get the opportunity to talk to the customer, and ask the question, hey, why did you choose us? Well, because you had the right solution and it works for us. Okay, great. But listen, let's be honest with each other. You could have bought a solution from one of two or three other very capable vendors. Ultimately, what about the company, their performance, your customer experience led you to say, this is the people I need to do business with? So not only do they learn that product in context, but they assemble a bunch of great stories they can share with people in the future. How is that a bad thing? And then when we actually do the classroom training, they're like, oh yeah, I've seen this. I know how this works. I think that's absolutely brilliant. But it leads me to my second question. When you were a new sales guy, they brought you in and they were teaching you how to sell. So we have so many things to do to get Robin ready to go out in the field. You got to learn the industry, got to learn a little bit about our products. We need to teach you something about selling as well, and emotional intelligence and things like that. How much time do you spend in the selling skills and or selling processes side, and which ones do you think are critical for the brand new sales guy?
So what should you do?
Yes.
Yeah. I 100% believe in developing someone's emotional intelligence. And actually, I think what you find is that a lot of people, they have a fair degree of emotional intelligence. They just don't know how to express it or what to do with it.
Right.
So they get involved in a big corporation or selling some fancy, strong branded product, and they suddenly feel like they have to act a certain way, that they have to use different language and they have to put on their corporate mask.
Yes.
Right? And then they kind of lose that sense of just how to articulate things really, really simply. Then they get intimidated, particularly if they're younger, of the titles of the people they got to speak to. Oh, I've got to speak to a chief financial officer or a Fortune 250 company.
Right.
Oh God, that's a really important person, and their whole mindset go goes out the window, and they believe that they have to position themselves differently, which I think is generally less emotionally intelligent because they've suddenly in that moment become less socially aware,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
So they become so concerned with kind of themselves, like, what am I saying? Am I saying the right words? Am I bringing out the right statistics? And all of that anxiety and all of that kind of thinking stops them from actually being able to be in the moment, be detached, read the room, and actually connect with that person.
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you think role play is a good tool to develop salespeople?
I do, um, in certain instances. So I think that you should role play with people. I think one, role plays should be generally more challenging than a customer conversation.
Right.
And I think sometimes when we role play internally, we like to try and make it easy and we try to, but you should actually be a little bit tougher. And I think role plays are good for someone to be able to practice any kind of framework or narrative that they're building so you can actually see the process.
Right.
Okay. But they're not reflective of a real conversation. You've got all sorts of biases in place, and your sales manager is not going to behave in the same way as a new prospect. They're not going to, they might ask some of the same questions, but they're not going to behave and phrase them in exactly the same way. So I think they have a purpose. But I also think you shouldn't role play with people who are not experienced.
Yes.
So when you get a bunch of juniors role playing with each other, it might, break the ice, build up a little bit of confidence, but it's not going to develop any real skill because you're not able to. They'll start coaching each other, and it'll be the blind leading the blind.
Yeah. 100%. So you mentioned there was a point in time in your career when you kind of pivoted. I mean, you had a big turn because
Mm.
you ran into a sales mentor, a sales coach that really made a difference for you. What did he or she do differently? I mean, what was I know what the impact was because you talked about it, but what did
Mm.
they do that really made that difference?
Yeah. So they were really into their personal development, and but there was something about, and maybe it was because I was young and impressionable at that time, but it wasn't the first sales manager I'd ever worked with. But there was something about the way they held themselves, something about the way that they connected with everybody. Like they were one of those people that you would say just has natural charisma. Guess what I found out? It wasn't natural. Okay. That it was learned, it was a skill. Okay. And that if that person could learn it, then maybe I had half a chance of being just even a fraction of influential as this person was. So I really looked up to this person. I kind of idolized them. They probably didn't know that at the time. But they set me on a course which got me exploring personal development. I then managed to train in a couple of different therapies, which we spoke about.
Yes.
One of them previous, and I kind of pursued that route. I became a coach. I became a certified life coach and a practitioner of a couple of different therapies. And I enjoyed doing executive coaching. I enjoyed having a positive impact on people's lives. But the process. So I became a psychotherapist, and then I kind of thought, hold on, I'm getting people come in one emotional state with a that is manifesting itself in a behavior that they
Right.
want to. They are leaving my office in a different emotional state, making new decisions about what they're going to do. I have influenced and persuaded that person ethically and reasonably effortlessly, and they've thanked me for it. Why couldn't I do that when I was calling bank managers
Right.
or business owners, right? And I just and that's where the kind of sales therapist comes from, is
Right.
that sales should be like therapy. If you learn the skills that a therapist has, they are able to get people to open up. They have the emotional intelligence, the empathy. They know how to ask the right questions. They know how to get behind someone's responses. And it's not appropriate for everything, but it's certainly I just thought, hey, look, why can this all this stuff around neuroscience and behavioral science and behavioral psychology that we know that is data proven.
Right.
Why are salespeople doing exactly the opposite?
Exactly the
It never
opposite.
made sense to me.
All right. It really is interesting. And the thing about it is when you take that new salesperson, they have no understanding of that, and they're learning all the product and everything. And like you said, they go in with this great anxiety. And yet what you're able to do with simply an understanding of human behavior, you learn that influence is simply about helping people overcome some emotional hurdles. I mean, the biggest, at least from my perspective, Robin, I'm really interested to hear your perspective. But to me, the biggest emotional hurdle you're dealing with is fear. Fear of missing out, fear of making a wrong decision, fear of what my boss is going to think, and so forth and so on. And for me to help you navigate those hurdles, get you a long way towards a sale.
Yeah, that's it. So I just think those skills, and we spoke about, listening and all that kind of, I just think that we've kind of lost that. We're listening to reply. We're listening for buying signals rather than actually what someone actually means.
Yeah, that's
so we're not active listening.
Right.
We're listening, hoping to catch that little thing that we can then go, oh, I can hook them there. And that's the wrong type of listening.
Yes, 100%. He's Robin Burr. You're going to want to find him on LinkedIn, as I mentioned. He's got the perfect sales framework, the perfect discovery call framework, which is absolutely invaluable. And coming up next, what he's going to share with us is the biggest mistake that he thinks sales leaders make when it comes to developing their sales team. Stay with us. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show. When you take your very best salesperson and you promote them to sales manager, well, you get two things. You lose your best salesperson, and most of the time, and I do mean most, 90+% of the time, you get a very bad sales manager, mediocre at best. The question is, if we know this is true, and look, there's not been a scientific study done on it that I can find, but I have talked to hundreds of HR people and VP sales, general managers, owners. They all agree. Yeah, it's a dumpster fire. Welcome back, Sales Untraining. I'm Kelly Riggs. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. Well, what are we trying to rewire? The way we approach sales training is, politely, I'll say it's flawed. Systemically, it's a train wreck. It's a sales dumpster fire, and you don't want to miss the series that I'm doing on sales dumpster fires. I already got 3 of those up on the channel. Make sure you check those out. But Robin Burr joining us. We're talking about the psychology of selling, and I'm really interested, Robin, when we talk about the biggest mistake that sales leaders make in developing their sales teams. From your perspective, based on your background, where are sales leaders, sales managers, where are they going awry?
They're filling their head of their new SDRs or BDRs or whatever you want to call them with product knowledge. So much product knowledge. When you start with an organization, you look at your first 2 weeks of onboarding. What's the training going to look like? It's here's the product. Here's how it all works. You go watch a couple of demos. Here's all the technical specification that you need to know, and you fill your head with all of that information, and then send your reps out into the world and wonder why that's the thing that starts spilling out.
Right.
And then you try telling your reps, oh, you shouldn't talk about the product so much. It's like, well, that's my comfort zone. You made that my comfort zone. What am I going to do when I get uncomfortable, when I get nervous, when I get anxious? I'm going to go to my comfort zone, and that's talking about the product. Imagine if I didn't have that.
And this is where the whole insanity thing just kills me. It's like, doing the same thing over and over. There is boatloads of research out there that says if you go straight to demo, your chances of closing that deal drop dramatically, right? And yet all these SDRs, BDRs, so many of them, even business to business salespeople in the world that I live in, the first thing they want to do is they want to start showing a product, or they want to get a proposal out right away, right? And the numbers just say that's asinine. but yet we keep doing it.
Yeah, because it's easy.
There you go. Because it's easy. Is there a way to change that? I mean, that's the thing is, I think sales managers, sales leaders, corporate leaders, they have the same problem that we all do. They don't change easily. They don't like change. Well, we'll just keep doing that. Maybe we'll just get lucky, Robin, and we'll find some natural born salespeople, and then we can teach them the product, and then they can go out. So, is there such a thing? Natural born sales leader?
Natural ones. Yeah, I think there are, but I think they're like 1 in 1,000. And I think they're just inherently, have that, confidence, charisma, and commercial acumen. But for us mere mortals, no, I think what happens is here's the thing, right? Is you generally have people who work their way up through sales and then become a sales manager. So they may well, not always, but they may well have been for the organization for a while back. And now they're not selling. They're out of touch with how prospects have changed. So their reference point is, oh, well, that's what I used to do. Now, what's going to fix that issue is, well, how about we hire more people? How about we invest in more marketing? What about if we double down on activity? Let's get some sales tools in to make us more efficient. Not effective,
right?
But efficient.
Yes.
How can we do more? Well, sometimes doing more isn't the answer. Sometimes doing less gives you room for, doing the right things.
Yeah. It's like the concept of the salesperson who's got a defined territory and, say they've got 150 or 200 customers and you say, listen, that's crazy. You can't manage that many customers. So what we're going to do is cut you down to 60 and give you 20 prime targets, to go grow your business. But we want you to give up 120 of these meaningless, very small customers. And salespeople lose their mind. They're like, no. You can't take. Like, do you understand that you've already pulled all the low hanging fruit? I mean, it's time to really focus on serious growth and not just what falls out off the tree. And being able to say, I have 200 customers is like this. It's like this lifeline or something, right? But it's totally ineffective.
Yeah, and then you're just busy being busy because you're running around on like a hamster wheel, just trying to find any scrap of a deal because you've given yourself no room to actually seriously prospect and find new customers. And one of the posts I put on LinkedIn a while ago was around how I think every year you should fire 10 to 20% of your customers. You look at your customer portfolio every year. Yeah. And you look at 10%, and you can decide who you relegate. It might be, and for any sales managers listening to this will go, well, it'd be the ones who don't spend with us, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
And there might be customers there that are giving you fairly good revenue, but they're just a pain in the ass, and they're sucking your time and your energy, or they might give you a lot of business, but because they negotiated so hard, there's no profit in it. So you got to really select, like, who are my worst customers? However you want to define that, I've got to clear them out and make way for new blood. And you should do that every year, I think.
100%.
But you're right, people would freak out.
They do. But here's what's interesting. You ask a group in an audience, how many of you have customers you really need to fire? Everybody raises their hand. Nobody doesn't raise their hand. And then you go, well, why haven't you done it? And they look at you like you've got three heads. What? No. We don't like them, but Kelly, we have to have them. Like, no, you don't. I mean, they're making your life miserable.
Need them. Why? And then there's that, so you're needy.
Yes. Yeah. Such a great conversation. Selling is psychology, and Robin Burr is a guy that knows an awful lot about it. Make sure you go find him on LinkedIn. And I want to ask you to rejoin us next time on Sales Untrained. By the way, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. It means a lot to me and to the distribution of the podcast, but more importantly, please share it with someone that you think should be in on this conversation. We'll see you next time.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.